Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a thoughtful exploration of ethics in practical contexts. Our presentation is titled Applying Moral Principles to Real-World Ethical Scenarios, where we'll examine how foundational ethical ideas influence decisions and actions in everyday situations. I'm excited to take you through this important topic and explore how ethics shapes the choices we make in the modern world. Let's get started. Here we have an introduction to some key moral principles that guide ethical decision-making. First, autonomy, represented by the portrait icon, emphasizes the importance of respecting individual choice and self-governance. This principle values people's freedom to make their own decisions. Next is beneficence, shown with a heart icon, which focuses on promoting good and acting in the best interest of others, highlighting a core duty to contribute positively to others' well-being. Then we have non-maleficence, symbolized by the shield, a fundamental ethical rule that stresses the need to avoid causing harm to others. Finally, justice, depicted with a balanced scale icon, ensures fairness and equal treatment, guiding us to make moral decisions that are impartial and equitable. Together, these principles provide a solid foundation for understanding ethical behavior. Here we're looking at the primary ethical frameworks and their relative emphasis. Utilitarianism takes the lead, making up 40% of the focus. This approach is all about the greatest good for the greatest number, emphasizing outcomes and consequences. Deontology follows closely at 35%, which centers on duties and rules, suggesting that some actions are inherently right or wrong regardless of results. Finally, virtue ethics accounts for 25%, highlighting character and moral virtues as the foundation of ethical behavior. Understanding these frameworks helps us appreciate different perspectives on what guides ethical decision-making. Here, we focus on 4 key criteria for ensuring our ethical decisions are consistent and reliable. First, principle coherence means every choice we make should line up logically with our core ethical values. It's about staying true to foundational beliefs. Next, impartiality reminds us that decisions must be unbiased, fair, and treat everyone equally. No favoritism or prejudice. Transparency is also critical. We need to clearly explain the reasons behind our choices so that everyone understands the rationale. Finally, consequences assessment requires us to thoughtfully consider how our decisions affect all stakeholders involved, anticipating the potential outcomes. Together, these criteria help guide us to make ethical decisions that are balanced, clear, and responsible. Here, we're looking at the first scenario focused on healthcare ethics. On the left, we have 2 key ethical approaches to allocating treatment. First is the utilitarian approach, which is all about maximizing overall benefits, essentially saving the greatest number of lives possible. It's like weighing the outcomes to achieve the best overall result, which is symbolized by the weight scale icon. On the other hand, the deontological approach emphasizes following moral rules and duties. This perspective prioritizes fairness and equal treatment for all patients, regardless of the outcome, represented by the book icon, which reflects adherence to ethical principles. On the right, the image of a healthcare professional examining a pregnant woman reminds us that these ethical decisions are very real and impactful in clinical settings, especially in sensitive situations like prenatal care. Together, these approaches help us understand different ways to approach complex treatment decisions. Here, we're looking at 2 contrasting approaches to business ethics. On one side, we have the profit-first approach, which focuses on maximizing company profits, sometimes even at the expense of stakeholders. This mindset is rooted in the traditional financial principle of prioritizing shareholder value. You can see this represented by the coin icon. On the other hand, the stakeholder-centered approach emphasizes protecting and promoting the welfare of all stakeholders, not just focusing on profits. This is aligned with ethical responsibility and sustainability, highlighting a more balanced and conscientious way to do business. The handshake icon here symbolizes collaboration and trust. The image on the left, showing a group collaborating around a table, really captures the idea of teamwork and shared responsibility, which ties closely to the stakeholder-centered philosophy. Overall, this slide challenges us to think about where a company's priorities lie when it comes to ethics. Here, we're looking at 3 different policies related to social justice issues and how community resources are allocated. First, Policy A is universal access, which means everyone in the community gets equal access to resources. This approach is great for promoting fairness and equity, but it might not always be the most efficient way to use limited resources. Next, Policy B focuses on needs-based allocation. This policy directs resources specifically to individuals or groups who need them the most. It's designed to advance justice by helping the underserved, though it can be less efficient and harder to apply consistently across the board. Finally, Policy C is market-driven distribution, where access to resources is largely determined by market forces. This can boost efficiency by letting supply and demand guide distribution, but it risks creating inequalities and may not ensure equal opportunity for everyone. Each policy has its strengths and challenges, balancing fairness, justice, and efficiency in different ways. The image here reflects our community focus, people engaging in dialogue and learning about these important social issues. First, we start by clearly defining the dilemma. This means identifying the ethical problem at its core, so we fully understand the context and what's at stake. Next, we identify all the stakeholders involved. Recognizing who is affected helps us consider their interests and perspectives, which is crucial for a fair evaluation. Then, we map the relevant moral principles that apply to the situation. These principles act as a guide to analyze the dilemma more deeply. After that, we evaluate the options by comparing alternatives through established ethical frameworks. This step helps us weigh the possible consequences and values associated with each choice. Finally, we state a justified conclusion, a reasoned decision based on the analysis and principles we've applied throughout the process. This step-by-step approach ensures that our moral reasoning is thorough, balanced, and well-supported. When applying ethics consistently, we face several challenges that can complicate decision-making. First, conflicting principles often arise. Ethical guidelines may suggest opposite courses of action, creating dilemmas that aren't easy to resolve. Then there's incomplete information. Without having all the facts, it's difficult to assess the situation fully and make the best ethical choice. Cognitive biases also come into play. Our personal biases can cloud our judgment and lead to inconsistent ethical decisions. Additionally, cultural differences matter. A behavior considered ethical in one culture might be viewed differently in another, influencing how ethics are interpreted. Lastly, institutional constraints, like organizational rules and policies, can limit the ethical options available, sometimes forcing choices that don't align with our personal values. Recognizing these challenges helps us navigate complex ethical situations more thoughtfully. When aiming for justifiable ethical outcomes, there are several best practices we should keep in mind. First, it's crucial to document the reasoning behind every decision we make. This ensures transparency and accountability, allowing others to understand the logic that guided our choices. Next, seeking diverse perspectives helps us incorporate different viewpoints, which not only enhances fairness, but also reduces the risk of bias. Applying consistent criteria is equally important. By using uniform standards to evaluate options, we maintain ethical integrity across all decisions. Finally, we should revisit decisions regularly, reviewing outcomes to incorporate new evidence and continuously improve future choices. Together, these steps create a robust framework for ethical decision-making. To wrap up, let's focus on 3 key areas. First, the principles and frameworks that form the foundation. These include autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice, which work alongside ethical theories like utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. Next, applying these principles step by step allows us to systematically analyze cases, ensuring our conclusions are consistent and well justified. Finally, adopting best practices by following practical guidelines helps us make decisions that are both defensible and ethically sound. Together, these elements provide a comprehensive approach to ethical decision-making.